The end of the world has come, and the wealthy second-generation Lufei has been targeted by his classmates, ambushed by his class monitor, and infected with the zombie virus. Desperate Luffy, with a dying heart, attempted to take a large amount of medicine, and coincidentally, he became a zombie with human consciousness. The enemies of zombies, including humans, other zombies, mutated beasts, mutated plants, and other natural and man-made disasters, pose a great danger to the world. Luffy has decided to keep a low profile, no matter how low-key or low-key, and will never make a fuss about it. Accidentally, Go became the Emperor of Corpse, and Luffy decided to let him live forever. Keywords of the novel. Doomsday Go to Corpse Emperor no pop-ups, Doomsday Go to Corpse Emperor TXT Complete Collection Download, Doomsday Go to Corpse Emperor Latest Chapter Reading. Chapter 1. Zombie Apocalypse Infection. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 2. Emergency Medical Treatment. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 2 Emergency Medical Treatment. There was no time to recall, and Luffy felt a deep regret. He regretted why he had been morally kidnapped by them for the sake of face. Even if he was targeted, he should have kept a low profile and didn't see those cowards still living well in the private room at this moment. If he had to do it again, he would definitely have kept a low profile, even if he had his tail between his legs. At the same time, he also deeply hates those who targeted him. If possible, you should die too. Li Yufeng, it's not that my family background is better than yours, and I'm richer than you. It's your childhood sweetheart who secretly flirts with me, unable to resist the temptation of money and material possessions. When I turn green, you numb me and take the lead in targeting me, even causing me to be bitten by zombies today. Also, Zhang Fong, why don't you take a look at yourself? I feel nauseous when I see you. Is it wrong to refuse you? School flower me Xiao, you are the school flower. That's right. I like your appearance and figure, but I also paid a big price, okay? Is it wrong for me to only talk about money with material people? You insist on talking about feelings with me, it's too hasty. At this moment, if possible, he really wanted all those who targeted him to die, but he understood that it was already the end of the world, and the past financial status could not bring him any help. He was not a match for Li Yufeng and his team. At this moment, seeking revenge and waiting for him, only death could come to an end for them. Thinking of death, Luffy let out a desperate roar and said, I really don't want to die. After half a month of apocalyptic experience, he understood that being scratched and bitten by a zombie had only one outcome, which was that the zombie would become a bloodthirsty zombie, seemingly without a second path. No, there was a second path, which was to commit suicide or be killed before the zombie transformed. Suicide. Lufei looked at the wall beside him. Perhaps he could have died if he had risked his life to crash into it. But after thinking about it, he still didn't have the courage to bump into it. Then let nature take its course and turn into a zombie. I don't know what it feels like to die, either. It should be very painful when the corpse changes. Lufei thought, no, even if I turn into a zombie, I can't die in their hands. The thought of turning into a zombie and possibly being killed again by Li Yufeng made him feel uneasy. I want to leave here. Even if I die outside, I want to leave here. Thinking about it, Lufei ignored the pain in his feet and ran away. The zombies in the hallway have been cleared by them, and Luffy arrived at the hall through another safe passage. Looking through the iron gate window, the hall was empty, indicating that they had been drawn to the safe passage before. Opening the door, Luffy ran wildly here. The door leading to the outside world in the hall was wide open, and the zombies were hovering outside. However, Luffy couldn't care anymore at this moment. He just wanted to escape here, run far away, and then his own corpse would change. He wouldn't come here again and be killed by them again. So he didn't care if he would attract the attention of the zombies, opened his legs, and ran down the street. The zombie, who was startled by Luffy, froze for a moment and chased after him. The zombie's strength has increased, but its speed is much slower than that of a normal person, and its flexibility is also low. Luffy uses speed and flexibility to constantly run around in the chaotic traffic on the street. When encountering zombies blocking the way, he ignores them and avoids them. The constant pain from his ankle urged him to stop, and Luffy gritted his teeth. Compared to death, this pain that had not hurt his shins was nothing. At this moment, he had already run about 700 or 800 meters away from the hotel when suddenly he saw a clinic on the street with the door open. A strange thought arises in my mind: can drugs kill viruses? As soon as this idea appeared, it became uncontrollable. Try it. Thinking that his feet were getting faster, he reached into his pocket with his right hand and took out his weapon, a plum blossom screwdriver about 30 centimeters long. Turning around, he plunged into the clinic and casually closed the door. After a moment, Luffy gasped for breath and looked at the two zombies wearing white coats in the medicine cabinet counter of the clinic. The zombies were isolated by the medicine cabinet and tempered glass 15 centimeters away from the cabinet. When he saw Luffy, the two zombies fought their lives to crawl out and got stuck on the counter, temporarily safe. Turning around and looking behind me, there were zombies outside the clinic door, constantly tapping the door. The clinic door was facing outward and temporarily safe. Through the semi-transparent tempered glass walls of the clinic, although there were zombies inside, they were blocked by doors designed to open inward. Zombies only have a bloodthirsty instinct and no intelligence at all. They just keep pushing the door outward, and of course, they are isolated in the room. Continuing with the natural barrier at the bar, Luffy effortlessly used a screwdriver to eliminate two zombies. Through the door on the left side of the bar, Lu flew into the bar. The bar is full of medicine, and there is also a medicine cabinet behind it. But looking at the dazzling array of medicines, Luffy encountered another difficulty. Damn it, what medicine should he choose? Lufei is not a doctor. I don't know which drugs can kill the virus. What drugs can inhibit the virus? But there is no time left. The virus on the leg has spread upwards. Upon closer inspection, the black network of blood vessels on the leg has spread to the thigh. Although it is not clear, upon closer inspection, it can still be detected. Perhaps as long as it spreads to the heart and brain, one will become necrotic. The thigh, which had been infected by the virus, felt a piercing pain, and Luffy trembled as he looked at the medicine and made a mistake. He thought of taking some painkillers first, and then looking for antiviral drugs, but the idea was beautiful, and the reality was cruel. The drugs he knew were just ordinary drugs for treating colds, such as cephalosporin, norfloxacin, and Sanjiu granules. I don't know what the medicine is for, even if I don't know it. Even he couldn't find any painkillers. After reading several drug manuals one after another, Luffy felt that they were not suitable. Damn it! The virus has spread to the waist. There was no time left. Luffy took a few deep breaths, trying to calm himself down. It's too late, don't care. Lufei exclaimed, holding a bunch of drugs in the columns of antibiotics and special drugs, unpacking them and placing them on the bar. Antibiotics have an inhibitory effect on virus growth, and Luffy is unsure if they can kill the virus. Special drugs are targeted, although it is unclear whether they can target the virus. But I can't handle that much anymore. The big deal is death. There shouldn't be any other possibility. There is medical glucose in the bar, so I took a bottle and didn't read the drug manual. When I saw the medicine, I poured out some and stuffed it into my mouth. Then, I took a sip of glucose water and drank it. There was a pile of medicine in front of him, and he drank some of each until Luffy could no longer drink anything before stopping. Now he feels like he's in a hurry to seek medical attention. Ah! The whole body is already in pain, and the stomach is also churning, as if pricked by a needle. The brain is also slightly swollen, just like the time when the fever reached 39 degrees, the brain began to show signs of disorder. Luffy sat down trembling and leaned against the counter behind him, lifting his clothes. The virus had already spread to his chest and was still spreading at a visible speed to the naked eye. His eyes gradually became hollow. Are you going to die? Lufei sighed, he could only do this. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Smart Zombies. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Smart Zombies. Luffy's hollow pupils looked out at the blue sky outside the window. The sky was very blue, and the white clouds were very white. Goodbye to this world where I was born and raised. Luffy sighed inwardly as his body began to tremble. The virus spread to his chest, and the speed of transmission suddenly increased. A network of blue and black blood vessels appeared in Luffy's neck, followed by his face and brain. Suddenly, Luffy's pupils began to change color, and the originally black pupils gradually turned grayish-white, then grayish-white filled the entire eyeball. Pain. Luffy only felt endless pain engulfing him, with only one thought in his mind, which was to die. Accompanied by this thought, Luffy's body twisted extremely, staring with gray pupils, opening his mouth wide and roaring. His gums changed color, and the junction with his teeth became extremely red with blood. This is a sign of impending dismemberment. Just as Luffy couldn't bear the excruciating pain and was about to collapse mentally, a warm current struck, restoring some clarity to his consciousness. If someone is here, you can see that their eyes have returned to their normal black color. This. Luffy felt a sense of joy in his heart, didn't he? Before he could think much, a sharp pain came again, and Luffy fell into endless pain once again. Luffy roared and hissed, his heart beating violently, then gradually slowing down until it stopped beating. The body also slowly spread out on the ground from its violent twisting just now, and stopped moving. The gray-white pupils have never regained their clarity. Luffy didn't know how long had passed, just like a sleeping person suddenly waking up, his mouth closed, and he blinked his eyes. He stretched out his hands in confusion and looked left and right. There is no difference between the hands of zombies I have encountered before, perhaps the only difference is that they are cleaner, without any minced meat or dark black blood. Ah! Luffy opened his mouth, but couldn't say anything. He had no breath, no airflow, and his vocal cords couldn't vibrate and make a sound. Looking up, it was the same clinic as before, and through the tempered glass, he saw himself in the reflection. It's no different from the zombies I've seen before. Still turned into a zombie. Luffy let out a deep sigh in his heart, stepped away, and the next moment he opened the bars and walked out. My legs are so heavy, they have also become much stiff. Ha! No. Suddenly he turned his head to look at the bar door. Can I open the door? Thinking of this, he suddenly focused his gaze on the drugs on the shelf, recognizing every word. Is that so? Do I still have human consciousness? He immediately tried to recall. The appearance of parents, their indulgence, and various past memories all come to mind. 1 + 1 = 2, 50 + 50 = 100, and heaven will bestow great responsibilities on this person. Waha! Suddenly, Luffy burst out laughing in his heart, opening his mouth and dancing with his teeth open. I'm still alive. Suddenly realizing this, Luffy became excited and covered his mouth with one hand, wanting to breathe, but there was no airflow flowing through. Then he covered his neck, his arteries not beating, picked up a sharp screwdriver, stabbed his arm, but there was no pain. Hey, I've turned into a zombie, a stone hammer. However, although he became a zombie, he did not lose consciousness, even if he was alive. Suddenly, he focused his attention on one of the wards with only one zombie. Whether it's a zombie or not needs to be verified. If the zombie still attacks him, it's nonsense. He can't return to the human survivor camp, and he can't tolerate the zombie camp. It's better for him to poke his head with a knife early and let it go. Thinking about it, Luffy clenched the screwdriver and walked to the door of the ward, slowly pushing it open. At the same time, his hand holding the screwdriver was raised high. As long as the zombie inside showed signs of attacking him, he would be the first to insert the screwdriver into the zombie's head. The door shaft made a creaking sound. The zombie inside suddenly turned around and looked at Luffy with terrifying gray and white eyes. After a while, it turned around again. It's of the same kind, not edible. Don't eat me. Do you really see me as one of the same kind? Luffy felt happy in his heart. At the same time, he continued to slowly approach the zombie, even touching it. The collided zombie suddenly turned its head, opened its mouth, as if warning, and then turned around again. Waha! Luffy chuckled in his heart, heaven cannot stop me. Luffy turned around and bowed to the sky. The end of the day, although turned into a zombie, it was a zombie with human thinking. Luffy thought for a moment and it didn't seem so difficult to accept. But then again, does he have any other way? The only way is to quickly become familiar with the new identity of zombies and live as much as possible, even if it is in a zombie state. He clenched the screwdriver in his hand and cleaned up all the zombies in the clinic. Although he had become a zombie now and the zombies would not attack him, his thinking was human. As long as there were zombies around him, he felt dangerous. Luffy has not yet adapted and has turned into a zombie. Then he checked the clinic again, and found that the outside of the clinic was surrounded by many zombies, but there was no back door. After confirming its safety, Lufei found an empty ward and sat on the infusion chair in the ward. Upon further examination, Luffy confirmed that, like the zombies outside, his strength had increased, but his speed and flexibility had decreased. The exact amount of increase remains to be determined. This means that he may be killed by humans like other zombies. Based on the experience before being bitten, Luffy made a decision. Even if you are a zombie, you must keep a low profile. It should be noted that the end of the world has come. Although humans have been slaughtered on a large scale and turned into zombies, after a period of baptism, the mortality rate of zombies has significantly increased. The humans who react will use all available weapons to kill zombies and obtain living space. In addition to humans, there are more dangers in the apocalypse that not only humans have to face, but also all kinds of creatures. Luffy, who has watched apocalyptic movies and read many apocalyptic novels, firmly believes in this. Therefore, Luffy secretly decided to make low-key the highest code of conduct for future actions, and only by persevering can he survive until the end. So after becoming a zombie, he didn't immediately have a swollen brain and ran to seek revenge on Liu Feng. Instead, he hid in the clinic and reminisced deeply. The current Luffy is not a match for the group of people in the private room. The most important thing is that he is not reborn, familiar with the direction of the apocalypse, knows how to seek good fortune and avoid evil, and does not have the system of the protagonist in the novel to guide him. Some only have the advantage of being both zombies and not afraid of zombies. Perhaps there is another one, which is that he possesses wisdom compared to other zombies. As the saying goes, hooligans know martial arts, and no one can stop them. I don't know what kind of spark this wise zombie can ignite in the apocalypse. Luffy's heart was vaguely filled with anticipation. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. The Unbreakable Temptation of Flesh and Blood. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. The Unbreakable Temptation of Flesh and Blood. After pondering for a while and then daydreaming for a while, Luffy was awakened by a commotion outside the door. Through several layers of windows, he saw all the zombies that had been hovering outside the clinic turning around and running wildly. Although the speed is only at the normal speed of a human trot, for zombies, it does belong to a wild run. Inexplicably, he also stood up, opened several doors of the clinic one after another, and appeared on the street. Not far away, about 50 or 60 meters away, there were several human screams coming from. Delicious. Lufei unconsciously ran a few steps on the street before finally arriving. His brain kept giving him instructions, and there was delicious food ahead, even his heart and Luffy felt a beat. He stubbornly stopped wanting to move forward. He understood that although he still had this person's thinking, the essence of his body was truly a zombie. When he heard human voices, his brain nerves would be very sensitive and issue commands. Eat at all costs. In addition to feeling his heartbeat, his nose also moved. In the distance, more than 20 zombies had already pressed and bitten a living person, emitting an extremely tempting smell that continued to force him to pounce and eat. Luffy's footsteps slowly moved, although he had been controlling them all along. His brain seemed to be filled with two people, one righteous and one evil, engaged in a struggle. Luffy doesn't want to eat people, he belongs to the righteous side. The other one is constantly giving orders to eat people, belonging to the evil side. Amidst the struggle between the two, it seemed that the evil side had an advantage at this moment, and Luffy slowly took a step forward. No way. I can't eat people. Eat it, you're already a zombie now. It's natural for zombies to eat people. Yeah, I'm already a zombie now, then let's eat. Eat, live flesh and blood, the most delicious. No, I have the same mindset as before. I can't eat people. In the fierce struggle, Luffy's pace was slow, and by the time he reached the outskirts surrounded by a group of corpses, all the zombies had already stood up. In the encirclement, a skull with some black-brown flesh and blood lay on the ground, with no complete flesh and blood on its entire body. It was eaten by the zombies, and the brain, protected by the skull, only had its skin and flesh torn off. However, the brain tissue was completely transformed, and at this moment, the body's flesh and meridians were eaten separately. The body skeleton could no longer move, and only the upper and lower jaws were able to move, constantly opening and closing. Looking at such a zombie, Luffy felt a lingering fear and was somewhat grateful. He dared to guarantee that if there were a living person in front of him at this moment, he would definitely pounce. Because now there is a strong regret in his brain, just like when he was in school, he was hungry and finally stayed up until school was over. Then he was delayed by something and went to the cafeteria late, feeling like he had no food left. Although he had turned into a zombie, he didn't want to eat people from the bottom of his heart. Although he didn't think he was a good person and could accept murder, he couldn't accept eating people. Thinking that he quickly left the devastated streets, he guessed that the survivor who had just survived chose to abandon the car because he had previously attracted a large wave of zombies to the front of the clinic and struggled in the car for half a month. But for half a month, I will definitely suffer from hunger and exhaustion, and eventually I won't even run out of the street, just be surrounded by zombies and eat separately. He's not sure if there are any living people on this street, but what if there are still? Before resolving his desire for the flesh and blood of living people, he decided to stay away from them. Silently entering the clinic again, closing the door, he arrived at the deepest ward of the clinic, afraid of being affected by the zombie activity outside the door again. Despite becoming a zombie, he still likes to sit and think about things. From the reactions of himself and the zombies on the street, Luffy felt that ordinary zombies do not have a sense of hunger, because without any sound, he no longer feels hungry and bloodthirsty. But once it rings again or the breath of a living person appears, the brain will issue a hungry command, making the zombie extremely bloodthirsty, even his own intelligent zombie cannot control. When there is no sound or a living person, the zombie will enter a hibernation-like state, only hovering slowly to greatly reduce consumption, or the zombie will not need to consume at all, which Luffy is not yet aware of. He decided to conduct an experiment and stay here for 1 or 2 days to see if he felt hungry. Then he thought again, after half a month of observation, the zombies only ate and didn't pull, because he didn't see any zombies squatting on the street defecating. Perhaps the zombies had digested all the live meat they had eaten, and the specific way of digestion remains to be studied. Although the digestion is relatively fast, Luffy vaguely feels that there is still a limit. So if he finds a zombie food that can replace live human meat, after eating it, he should be able to resist the temptation of live human meat. He can't eat it to the death, anyway, he hasn't seen any zombies that have been punctured in the past half-month. The instinct of zombies is to be bloodthirsty, but he believes that this instinct should also have the minimum survival instinct. If they eat too much, they will not achieve the purpose of survival. There was once a very famous biology professor who came to their school to give a lecture and said, even if everything in the world is small enough to be invisible to the naked eye, their most primitive instinct is survival instinct. The professor also gave a vivid example, saying, you are a human, it's not wrong, you want to live, but even if I am a small bacterium, I want to survive. This kind of survival is a concept that is detached from individual survival. A person dies, but as they have offspring, their bloodline survives. After a cell undergoes mitosis, it may seem that its original body no longer exists, but because of it, it splits into two cells carrying its genetic material, and it can also be considered alive. After releasing genetic material from the body, a virus's race will not die out. Therefore, the most basic instinct of each species is the survival instinct. Luffy thought about it, but after verifying whether zombies would starve, let's start this experiment. The sky gradually darkened, unlike the night before when the city was brightly lit and bustling with traffic. After the end of the day, the city was filled with silence, with only occasional unexplained sounds coming from the night sky. He buried his head between his legs, wanting to cry but without tears. He misses his parents. But since the outbreak of the apocalypse, communication has not yet been interrupted, and family members have been unable to be contacted. 2 days before the outbreak of the apocalypse, his parents, waiting for him to complete the score assessment, went to M Country with peace of mind to discuss business. That city has a very high population density, and he thinks the chances of his parents surviving are very low. Even if he turns into a zombie and wants to go to M Country, it is undoubtedly a night talk in the sky, separated by a Pacific Ocean. To find parents, one must first live and then gradually become stronger. Thinking of this, Luffy thought of another possibility. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Eating raw pork strips. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Eating raw pork strips. Thinking of going to see his parents when he becomes stronger in the future, Lufei felt that zombies could definitely become stronger, otherwise it would be a pity for the one who cannot eat and has a strong digestive system. This point still needs to be verified in the future. For a whole day and 2 nights, Luffy was thinking about how to take the zombie road in the future. At this moment, he is like a pioneer, thinking of possibilities in his mind and waiting for verification, as if crossing a river by feeling a stone. After experiencing this day and night, Luffy's first guess was verified. That is to say, zombies do not feel hungry, only when their brain sends commands will they feel hungry and the endless temptation to flesh and blood. It has also been verified that zombies do not starve to death. If zombies can really starve to death, not in 10.5 days, then wait for a 1.5 years. If zombies starve to death, the surviving humans will also win, but this is obviously impossible. This guess has been verified, so let's proceed to the second item. Can you resist the temptation of flesh and blood after being full? For the food of zombies, Luffy's first thought was of living flesh and blood, but he had already ruled it out. Human flesh is impossible to eat, and it is impossible to eat human flesh in his lifetime. Then he thought of fresh beef, mutton, and pork, which were stored in major supermarkets, but he was not sure if the meat stored there had gone bad, but it didn't affect him to investigate. Because there is a hydroelectric power station not far from LZ City, even if the people inside the station have turned into zombies, the hydroelectric power station can continue to supply power to LZ City for a period of time. The electricity transmitted from the hydroelectric power station to the city is high-voltage electricity. Since it is high-voltage electricity, it is unlikely to be built on the roadside in places that are easily accessible to pedestrians. Therefore, many places in LZ City have gone through half a month of apocalyptic baptism and have not experienced power outages. This can be confirmed every night. In LZ City, there were lights coming in at night, and even when he left the hotel, there was no power outage. He remembered that next to the hotel was a large shopping mall, and the underground floor was a large lifestyle supermarket. So Lufei set his first goal on the storage of raw meat in the supermarket. Before departure, Luffy prepared a necessary weapon, a screwdriver, which he hid in his pocket. He didn't intend to kill zombies, but prepared it for living people. He felt that the danger he was facing now mainly came from the survivors. If he encounters 2 or more survivors alone, he will undoubtedly die. Sometimes he even thinks that the key to zombies lies in their heads, whether or not to get a helmet to wear. But after thinking about it, he still thinks it over. There are zombies wearing helmets, but they are too conspicuous. Even if they are mixed in the zombie group, they still stand out among the crowd. This does not align with his established low-key strategy. Then came the 5 phones that were intentionally fully charged last night, sourced from several zombies who had died in the clinic, which he also carried into his pocket. The function of a mobile phone, Luffy looked in the direction of the hotel. After I overcome the temptation of flesh and blood, let you feel what despair is. He slowly opened the door of the clinic, observed outside, crawled out of the clinic, and walked unsteadily on the street. Although he could control his body to walk faster, he did not do so. Now is the correct way for a zombie to walk. Seemingly hesitating, but slowly moving forward. Even if someone sees him, they cannot distinguish him from the zombies on the street. Who knows how many survivors are observing the zombies on the street through the windows in the tall buildings on both sides of the street. Although Luffy also knows that although it may not cause harm to him, he cannot take any risks, be seen by others, and then be targeted. Sometimes details determine life and death. Luffy, who was among the corpses on the street, had a feeling of being hidden in the morning. After a short journey of less than 1 kilometer, Luffy wandered for nearly 20 minutes. After passing the hotel, he chose to ignore it and arrived not far from his designated mall, wandering with nearby zombies. If someone observes carefully, there is a zombie in the group of corpses, occasionally looking into the mall. The entrance to the shopping mall is open, and black blood has solidified on the ground inside and outside, with zombies constantly wandering in and out. There should be no living people left. After ensuring safety, Luffy continued to stumble into the mall. Continue with a doomsday scene. After entering the shopping mall, Lufei immediately saw the entrance of the CR Vanguard Life supermarket. There was an elevator in the entrance, leading to the first floor underground. The elevator had stopped, but Lufei still saw the light in the supermarket was on. Good luck. Indeed, there is still electricity. Upon further observation, there were numerous zombies in the supermarket below the elevator, similar to the scene of humans strolling around the mall before the end of the day. The presence of zombies meant safety, and Luffy got off the elevator. The shelves in the supermarket are neat, and there are also those that were hit during the apocalypse outbreak. The goods on the ground are mixed with blood residue, and some products are trampled on by wandering zombies, making various noises. It seems that these zombies have adapted to these sounds and no longer respond. Luffy continued to carefully blend into the group of corpses, walking towards the meat food area. But soon, Luffy was disappointed. Because from afar, he could see that the glass lids on these meat storage freezers were shattered and empty inside. It should have been eaten up by zombies. Upon closer inspection, it was indeed so. However, he became excited again because there was a dedicated counter in the meat area that sold fresh meat, not in a self-service form, with dedicated personnel serving it. Inside were 2 large freezers, and at this moment, the air compressor was still ringing, making a buzzing sound. He happily walked into the counter from one side and opened the freezer. A smell of meat wafted in, and Luffy saw the strips of raw pork being refrigerated inside. Picking up one and stuffing it into his mouth, Luffy felt a refreshing sensation as his cells conveyed a joyful message. Because it was for sale, the temperature in the freezer was not too low and the pork was not frozen into ice lumps. We tried lowering the temperature to prevent it from spoiling. As Luffy lifted the freezer, the zombies near the raw meat area turned their heads and rushed towards Luffy like friars. Slot. Lufei cursed inwardly, miscalculated. He should first deal with the nearby zombies before opening the freezer. Hey, forget it, let's have a meal first. Thinking that he continued to stuff pork strips into his mouth, after the corpse turned, Luffy felt that the biting force had increased significantly. With the meat strips inserted into his mouth, he could bite off a piece of meat in one bite and swallow it directly. By the time the first zombie crawled into the counter, Luffy had already eaten a pork elbow. Not enough. Continue. Luffy picked up a piece of meat again and swallowed it. A zombie beside him also climbed to the edge, joined the meat-eating group, followed by the second and third. Soon, the freezer was filled, and there were still zombies scrambling to climb into the counter. Grass had fallen, and Luffy felt behind him. He was getting more and more crowded beside him. The zombie guy next to him had already been squeezed into the freezer, but he still didn't know it and stuffed the meat strips into his mouth. I'll eat it too. After eating about 5 pieces of raw pork, Luffy felt a faint message coming from his brain. Enough, we can't eat anymore. Then, he suddenly realized that he was surrounded by zombies and squeezed to the point where he couldn't move. Even zombies are squeezing inside. He's panicking, shouldn't he be squeezed to death? End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Survivor Squad disguised as zombies. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 Survivor Squad disguised as zombies. Lufei felt lingering palpitations in his heart and felt fortunate that he didn't have to breathe, otherwise he would have suffocated. He pushed his back hard, tragically realizing that he couldn't push the layers of zombies with their combined strength. Your sister. He cursed inwardly, the meat in the freezer has been eaten and hasn't dispersed yet. However, after a while, the meat in the freezer ran out, and the zombies finally calmed down. However, there were already a lot of zombies squeezed into the bar, one by one, and they couldn't get out. The zombies outside the bar resumed their wandering state. Luffy was squeezed in the center of the bar, with zombies too dense, forcing him to push out bit by bit. At the same time, not far from the mall, 4 drones flew out of the high-rise windows of the mall, making a buzzing sound. A small audio system, suspended by a drone, stopped above the street 500 meters away from the mall. Soon, music came from the speaker. It is a song called "The Most Dazzling Ethnic Style," with the sound of the speakers being maximized, appearing so piercing on the quiet streets. In the supermarket, Luffy was still squeezing and was suddenly attracted by a burst of music. At the same time, the zombies in the supermarket also faintly heard the sound of music coming from the entrance of the supermarket. The zombies outside the bar were attracted by the music and ran towards the direction of the elevator one by one. The zombies inside the bar also began to stir up and crawl outside the bar. Lufei was stunned for a moment without any action. At this moment, he also confirmed the previous conjecture that after eating, he can resist temptation, and now he at least knows that he can resist the temptation of sound. This can be seen from the zombies around him who ate a lot of pork strips. The zombies who didn't eat meat crawled out like crazy, and the zombies who ate a lot of meat remained indifferent like Luffy. Then, Lufei focused his thoughts on the music outside the building. At this moment, when music appears, it is clear that some survivors are using it to achieve certain goals, and the probability of making mistakes is very low. Unable to figure out the situation for a moment, Luffy felt that it was better not to act blindly because it was obviously too late to leave the supermarket at this moment. The zombies in the supermarket had already run to the elevator and could quickly run out of the mall. If he went out again at this time, there was a high possibility of being alone. If he encountered survivors, it would be bad. Who says zombies are not afraid of survivors? After finally living in zombie form, Luffy doesn't want to die. Alright. 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 Suddenly, Luffy turned his head and heard the sound of the rolling shutter door pulling down. There are indeed survivors, and this time he is very certain because zombies can't even open or close doors, let alone pull down the scroll gate. And the survivors are still in this mall, probably just above the elevator, at the entrance of the mall. Luffy stepped back, and at this moment, there were only more than 10 zombies left in the bar. He hid in the group of zombies, carefully staring at the entrance of the elevator. Gradually, Luffy's mouth grew larger. After a while, he sighed, "Can you still operate like this?" That are 4 survivors disguised as zombies, each fully armed, with thick hats, swimming goggles, masks, gloves, and cloth boots. It was covered in zombie blood and covered with a thick layer of zombie flesh foam, even on the mask. 4 people held weapons, and one of them was a burly man holding a fire axe with sharp edges. The other 3 each hold a sharp mountaineering pick. Luffy saw them and inexplicably felt a headache. Their disguise was very successful because Luffy couldn't smell any scent of living people, and other zombies in the supermarket couldn't smell them, treating them as if they were of the same kind. A zombie that was not pulled away by the music didn't even notice it and walked past them. Puff. Then he was stabbed into his head with a mountaineering pickaxe and belched. The leading man made a few gestures upon seeing the situation, and the other 3 parted ways. Luffy speculated that they were going to clean up the remaining zombies in the supermarket. And their actions also confirmed Luffy's speculation. Damn it, it's not a good start. Luffy once again hid his hiding form. What to do? Run away. No, I can't run away from them. Compared to normal humans, zombies do not have an advantage in speed, so Luffy decisively gave up this idea. Struggling with them. It's not possible either. They have many people and each has weapons, so we can't beat the cliff. Upon seeing these 4 people, Luffy was exceptionally brave, especially the burly man holding a fire axe. He swung the axe like a plastic toy, but with each blow, a zombie had its head chopped off. Even one of them, with a petite figure, should be a woman and not afraid of zombies. With a pickaxe, either the zombie's genitals or temples will be removed. Damn it, this world is indeed very dangerous. Luffy sighed while pondering countermeasures, hoping that the dozen or so zombies around him would be there. I don't even know how to die, because they have all eaten their stomachs and their response to sound has decreased too much. They will definitely be chopping melons and vegetables by then. We must find a way. Thinking about it, Luffy slowly squatted down and then climbed down because he suddenly came up with a solution, which was to pretend to be dead. Wait a moment, wait for them to come over, kill these zombies, and then hide in the group of dead corpses. I'm sure they won't be able to find it either. Luffy doesn't believe it, they will be bored and go and give each dead zombie a blow to their head. After they had eaten and drunk enough to leave, I quickly ran away too. Mudun, zombies are afraid of people. If you say it out loud, no one will believe it. Luffy thought to himself, mocking himself. But soon, a voice shattered Luffy's beautiful idea. The woman inside said, "Husband, please slow down and don't destroy the zombie's brain. If there is a corpse sack inside, wouldn't that be a waste? With just 3 more, I can also become an evolutionist." Evolutioners. Luffy emphasized. Also, what is a corpse sack? Why can't we destroy the zombie's head? Luffy only hesitated for a moment before understanding. At the same time, the palpitations became even more severe. Perhaps just like in novels, a crystal grows in the head of a zombie, containing energy that can lead to human evolution. MMP. Thinking of this, Luffy smiled bitterly again in his heart. I haven't even figured out my own body yet, but you have already evolved and won't let us zombies live. With a bitter smile, he suddenly felt that he might be in danger today. These guys will have to dig their brains later. Luffy, who has already died once, is still very afraid of death. He even felt his heart beating violently. At this moment, the burly man said, "Then I'll go find something to eat first. You guys kill the zombies there and then find something to eat." Puff. Puff. Luffy lay in the corner, quite speechless towards the zombies around him. I mean, you're rebelling. You're zombies. Are you just being hit on the head by humans like a groundhog? From the skills of the 3 of them, it can be seen that they have killed many zombies in the past half-month. They are very skilled and have long lost their fear of zombies. Seeking collection and recommendation. There are also comments and various requests for support. Kneel down and thank you. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Killing the Corpse Bag. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Killing the Corpse Bag. Feeling depressed, in just 3 minutes, all the zombies in and around the bar were slaughtered, not because the zombies were weak, but because of several reasons. The first opponent was too strong, the second opponent disguised themselves as zombies and was mistaken for their own kind by zombies. The third group of zombies ate their fill and stopped responding to sound. You should know that the entire freezer of pork strips was almost eaten by Luffy and these dozen or so zombies who could get close to the freezer. As the zombies died one by one and collapsed on him, he became increasingly anxious by his side. "I'm full, you guys go eat, I'll find the corpse bag." Accompanied by the burly man's voice, he was so anxious that his body trembled faintly. Are you going to die again today? Does he believe that good luck will come to him again? Die again, 100% smoke will dissipate. No way. Calm down. Calm down. I still have a chance. Luffy kept comforting himself in his heart, trying to calm himself down and then eliminate his fear, not to panic. I still have a chance. He took out the screwdriver from his pocket and held it tightly in his hand. Luffy heard the other 3 people leave, leaving only the burly man outside the bar, and soon heard the sound of his skull cracking. Quickly, Luffy felt the burly man jump into the bar, perhaps because he was wearing a thick hat that was too hot. Most of the zombies in the supermarket were led outside by them, and the rest were all cleaned up. The man took off his hat and placed it on the bar. Luffy rolled his eyes and watched the burly man holding a file. Starting from hand to hand, the file was inserted into the skull of a zombie, and the technique was quite skilled, accurately inserting the file into the junction of the skull. It seems that there has been a lot of practice in the past half-month. Then he pressed one end of the file, and the skull of the zombie was lifted. He then reached in his hand wearing rubber gloves, and when he came out again, he had already pulled out the entire brain of the zombie. The human brain is red and white intermingled, while the zombie's brain is black and red intermingled, exuding strangeness. Then he rubbed his brain with both hands, causing the dark brown tissue to fall off one after another, leaving behind a mesh-like structure of varying thickness. It should be the unique nerves of zombies. Then, Luffy saw the burly man shake his head and casually throw the filth in his hand to the side. I think they haven't found the body bag in their mouth. Then, the burly man picked up a file and opened the head of a zombie, but it still didn't. He moved his body, lowered his head, and continued to get up. At this moment, his head happened to move not far from Luffy. Luffy clenched the screwdriver in his hand and stared intently at the burly man's head. He wanted an opportunity, an instant opportunity to insert the screwdriver into the man's temple. That's right, Luffy thinks he still has a chance. His chance is that no one would have thought that there would be a wise zombie in the pile of corpses who could unleash murder. At this moment, it's still a bit far away, maybe the man will react. Suddenly, the man burst into laughter, and Luffy saw a transparent gel-shaped object the size of an adult thumb egg in the center of the mesh structure in the man's hand, connected to it. It should be the corpse sack in their mouth. Inexplicably, Luffy had some longing for that corpse sack. Perhaps this corpse sack also had an effect on zombies. Whether it is specific or not remains to be verified. What Luffy needs to do now is to survive from the hands of the 4 survivors. Having obtained a corpse sack, the man was very excited. He carefully peeled off the network of nerves connected to the corpse sack, took out a small box from his waist and carefully placed it inside. Right now. Luffy gritted his teeth and waved his arm, gripping the screwdriver. With a soft thud. The screwdriver that Luffy was holding in his hand sank completely into the man's temple. The man's eyes widened and his mouth instantly opened wide. Lufei pulled out his screwdriver, and blood slowly flowed out of the small hole in the man's temple. He slowly fell to the ground, unable to close his eyes. He didn't even see who killed him until he died. The man died and left with endless regret. Luffy poked his head out and looked, intending to escape quickly when he saw the other 3 people walking out of the shelf towards this direction. Unable to escape, the only thing he could think of was to continue pretending to be a corpse. If you're lucky, maybe you can kill 1 or 2 more. So he continued to tilt his head and bury his body in the zombie corpse. "Husband, where are you?" The woman's voice came in response. "Huh? Where's it going?" The woman's voice grew closer and closer. Lufei's hand gripping the screwdriver tightened again. "Husband." The woman's exclamation came as she approached the bar and saw her husband lying among the corpses. The staring eyes and the blood flowing from her temples to her cheeks undoubtedly indicated that her husband had died, and he refused to close his eyes. "Husband, what's wrong with you?" The woman's voice trembled slightly, her expression suddenly changed, and she quickly jumped into the bar, attaching herself to look at the man. "Get up. What's wrong with you? Get up." She kept shaking the man, but he never responded. She didn't understand why her husband died in just a few minutes, not even 10 minutes. "Ah." She continued shaking the man while crying, "Who is it? Who is it?" If there were only a woman at this moment, her emotions would be in a state of turmoil. For Luffy, it would be the best time to kill him, but the other 2 men outside the bar had already discovered that the man was dead and instinctively took a defensive stance. They were back to back, just like the onlookers around the supermarket. The woman's emotions collapsed, but they were thinking, how could the zombies in the supermarket have already been cleaned up? Therefore, Luffy could only give up the idea of continuing to kill the woman. The woman continued to cry, feeling very sad and heart-wrenching. Lufei felt a little annoyed, but showed no mercy. He doesn't think he can survive even if he meets these people head-on. If he had softened a little before, then now he would be like the zombies lying around him. In fact, Luffy, who still possesses human thinking, does not want to kill unless there is hatred, such as Li Yufeng. But there's no way. In this situation, either you die or I die. I don't want to die, so go ahead and die. Therefore, if given the opportunity, Luffy would not hesitate to thrust the screwdriver in his hand into the woman's head again, even though she cried sadly, which could easily evoke a sense of pity. After wiping her tears for a long time, the woman said, "Xiao Lu, go and see if there are any missing zombies around. I want to avenge you, Brother Chen." One of the men remained silent for a moment and said, "Sister-in-law, the boss is already a first-order evolutioner. I think it would be better to kill him than the boss. I think we should leave quickly. This place is not suitable for staying for a long time." The woman suddenly turned her head and stared at the man, saying, "Why, just after Qingdong died, I can't move you anymore." The 2 men exchanged a glance, nodded, and then went to investigate the entire supermarket. No one suspected that the murderer of Qingdong was lying very close to his body. How close is it exactly? It's within reach. The 2 men were about to leave, and Luffy was overjoyed in his heart. Just wait for them to walk a little further, and then you can kill this woman yourself. But things didn't go as planned. Before the 2 of them could walk away, the woman sat down and continued to cry bitterly while holding the man's body. Under her buttocks, Luffy's face was contorted. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Molting. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Molting. We're getting closer, the zombie flesh can no longer conceal the scent of living flesh. Fortunately, Luffy's stomach is already full, otherwise he would definitely bite it in one bite. Fat and juicy. In addition to the scent of human flesh, there is also something unique to that woman's lower body. It seems like there hasn't been a smell of bathing for many days. Lie down. Lufei cursed inwardly. If it weren't for the woman sitting down, her thighs would have pressed against his grip on the screwdriver, and her backhand would have been the same. Do I have a slight obsession with cleanliness? But the zombie did not breathe, and all kinds of odors were like viruses, infecting every air molecule around him, and then drifting into his nose, absorbed by the brain nerves. Looking at the woman's previous skills, Lufei felt that she couldn't be fatal with just one blow, and could only endure it desperately. The woman continued to cry for a while, possibly because she was pressing on her leg nerves and feeling a bit numb. She moved and changed her position, and it was only then that Lufei was able to be liberated. Good opportunity. The woman completely exposed her back to Luffy, who sat up silently and raised the screwdriver in his hand. The woman suddenly felt the palpitations, and she suddenly turned her head. What caught the eye was a face with a clean face, but covered in black and red blood, and gray-white pupils. Zombies. This is the last thought in the woman's brain, as she suddenly turned her head and the screwdriver that was originally aimed at her temple entered her right eye, penetrating through it and damaging her brain. The fatal aspect of zombies lies in their brains, and the same goes for living humans. Their brains are instantly destroyed, and humans cannot even make a single sound. Killed the woman, Luffy lingered in the pile of corpses. There are 2 more men, maybe they will come back and go out. What if they encounter each other head-on? Speed is not his strong suit, nor is fighting. Now his advantage lies in being unexpected. No one would have thought that a zombie could face a living person, survive in a pile of corpses, and then suddenly give a fatal blow. After waiting for about 10 minutes, just as Luffy was about to lose his breath, the voice of the man previously known as Xiao Lu came through. Sister-in-law, no abnormalities were found in the entire supermarket. Sister-in-law. Sister-in-law, Lufei maintained his previous lying posture, staring at Xiao Lu and the 2 of them with gray-white pupils as they looked at each other. 6 brothers, here. The man next to Xiao Lu looked at the deceased woman with his mouth open and didn't know what to say. After shaking his head for a while, Xiao Lu looked around again and said seriously, "This place is too eerie. We need to leave quickly." The man next to him nodded and said, "Yes, anyway, we already know the secret of evolution. As long as we gather 10 corpse pouches and take them, we have a 90% chance of becoming an evolutionist and getting infected with the zombie virus." Xiao Lu nodded and said, "That's right, let's go quickly." The 2 of them ran away without a trace, which also made Lufei breathe a sigh of relief. The apocalypse is too dangerous. If it weren't for being caught off guard, it would have been oneself who died. He didn't get up at once. It was too thrilling ahead, so he lay down and said slowly. After lying down for a while, Luffy suddenly sat up, picked up the iron box that had fallen next to the man's body, and poured out the body bag inside the iron box. The corpse sack is about the size of a thumb egg, in a semi-transparent state. The outer layer is a thin film with flexibility, and it is filled with liquid of the same color as the film. 10 corpse pouches can make 90% of an evolutionist. At this moment, he remembered what the man had said and suddenly exclaimed, "The world will never lack genius." How did they know this news? Suddenly feeling a bit discouraged, before the end of the day, I was the proud son of heaven. What about after the end of the day? At this moment, I am just a walking corpse without a heartbeat, no breathing, no laughing, no crying, and no speaking. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but clench his hands tightly. Suddenly, an inexplicable fragrance came from the palm of his hand, emitting extreme temptation, giving Luffy a strong sense of eating. He opened his hand and it turned out that the corpse sack had been crushed by him, and the liquid had touched his hand. Ah! Lufei didn't understand. At some point, he had already placed his hand soaked in corpse sack liquid on the edge of his mouth for sweet food. The brain transmits an extremely comfortable feeling, which is transmitted throughout the body through the nerves. Luffy can be certain that there have been some subtle changes in his body, which are too subtle for him to perceive accurately, but he knows that they are beneficial changes for him. Thinking of this, Luffy picked up the file and hit the head of the zombie beneath him. Not as skilled as men, but isn't it just about prying open the skull? It's just a bit more effort. Well, not every zombie's head has a corpse sack, perhaps it's because zombies have evolved to a certain extent that they have a corpse sack. Luck was a bit unlucky, and after prying open 4 zombie heads in a row, he couldn't find the corpse sack. Luffy came to this conclusion. It wasn't until he pried open the 10th zombie's head that Luffy discovered the existence of the corpse sack. He then opened his eyes on all the zombies in the bar and didn't find the existence of the corpse sack. It seems that there aren't many zombies with body bags, the probability should only be 1 in 10, maybe even lower. Luffy concluded. By the way, she said she could evolve by 3 more points. This means that women already have 7 of them. Hey, how did I forget about this? Thinking of this, Luffy attached himself to the woman and began to explore. After a moment of exploration, Luffy found an iron box in the woman's shirt pocket. After opening it, 7 corpse pouches lay quietly inside. Haha. Luffy laughed in his heart, and indeed, robbing families and houses is the quickest way to get rich. Luffy picked up one and threw it into his mouth. The membrane of the corpse sack melted at the entrance, and the liquid softened at the entrance. The sense of comfort was once again transmitted, which could only be expressed in words, "I've eaten all of it." Besides being comfortable, there should be some changes. Thinking about it, Lufei poured all the corpse bags in the iron box into his mouth and swallowed them. Comfortable. At first, it was extremely comfortable, but Luffy suddenly felt something was wrong. His head suddenly began to swell, as if it was about to explode. Well, I shouldn't have sucked too much. He hugged his head in pain. Luffy suddenly remembered what was on TV. If that thing sucked too much, it would also be fatal. It's probably about the same now. Slowly, Luffy's head lost its swelling and pain, and he breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he didn't die. After moving his body, another eerie scene made his scalp tingle. He saw that his exposed skin had cracked into nail-sized squares, like land cracked due to drought. Between the cracked blocks, even dark red muscle tissue can be seen. How could this be? Luffy began to lose composure. He lifted his chest clothes, and so did his chest. With the movement of his arms, the skin on his arms peeled off. I clenched my fists, and so did my hands. After the skin peels off, the entire muscle tissue is exposed, as if it has been peeled alive. Lufei secretly cursed MMP, is this making him go further and further on the road of detachment from others? With a sigh, he got up from the pile of corpses, and as soon as his body moved, his skin began to peel off. Everyone, to some extent, has some OCD, and Luffy, who is dominated by OCD, has to take off his clothes and let his skin completely detach from his body. Looking down, the self-rescue at this moment is just like the human muscle diagram hanging in the hospital. Even the skin there is gone. Oh, lying down. Luffy screamed in his heart. Thinking of this, he habitually stroked his forehead and said, "What a damn thing." Ah. His scalp fell off even with his hair, and he grabbed it in his hand, leaving a furry hand. He suddenly felt a sense of death again. No one watching. Wild geese leave their voices behind, people leave their names behind. Friends who come and please leave your lovely footprints, comments are free, kneel down and thank you for your support. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Changes in the Body. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Changes in the Body. Luffy was very frustrated and didn't need to look in the mirror. He also knew what kind of ghost he looked like now. Previously, there was at least a hint of normal human appearance, but now. If it weren't for these experiences after the apocalypse, he felt that he could be scared to death by his own appearance. If you haven't died yet, you have to continue living. Thinking, he jumped out of the bar. He found that his body had become much more agile compared to before. After taking a few steps, his footsteps no longer stumbled. When he saw the fire axe on the bar, he held it in his hand. When the apocalypse had just arrived, he had tried the fire axe, but at that time, his strength was not strong. Although he held a powerful firefighting suit, it was indeed difficult to use. He needed to swing it with both hands, and a few swings would consume a lot of strength. It was not as effective as a small screwdriver. But now, Luffy fell with one hand and felt very relaxed, surprisingly achieving ease in sending and receiving. It seems that the strength is more than twice that of a normal human. Try your speed again. Thinking about it, Luffy picked up an axe and ran between the shelves in the supermarket. Becoming almost like a normal person, even a little faster. Luffy stopped and lowered his head again to observe his body. Except for the color that was different from the skinned human muscles, everything else was basically similar. By the way, when a person is skinned, they will bleed, but he didn't. The real leather fell off and a layer of flesh film exploded on the surface of the muscles. He reached out and poked with his nails, but surprisingly, it didn't break. You should know that the muscles of zombies are very soft, perhaps described as rotting and falling off with just a scratch, which is also one of the reasons why Luffy dare not take risks. If someone cuts off a piece of flesh on his body, it will not regenerate. Until before swallowing the corpse sack, the wound on his ankle still existed without any signs of healing. But now, Luffy has seen the wound on his ankle, with black and red granulation sprouting. Compared to decaying muscle tissue, Luffy saw activity in the current muscles. Perhaps this is not bad. Luffy was forced to accept his ghostly appearance again. At least now I have more strength and faster speed than before. And the nails are also longer and sharper than before. He felt that his nails could definitely cut open a person's throat. At the same time, he was more certain that zombies could also evolve and become stronger. Thinking of this, Luffy was excited for a moment. He opened his mouth and let out a roar. Previously, he couldn't do this at all. Zombies couldn't make their vocal cords vibrate without breathing, so they couldn't make any sound. But now, Luffy can achieve slight deformation of the lungs, squeeze out air, and let out a roar. But only that can be achieved. Next, Luffy began to take action. Firstly, he needed a piece of clothing, on the one hand to cover up his extremely conspicuous body, and on the other hand, because he was still in the end of human thinking, he had to wear clothes. There is an area in the supermarket where clothes are sold, although it is not a brand, it perfectly meets Luffy's requirements. He did not start to expand just because he became a little stronger, like in the TV show, wearing branded clothes and watches, and flaunting himself in the zombie world. Although he has become stronger, he still decides to keep a low profile, no matter how low-key or high-profile a creature is, it will always die the fastest. Tigers should keep a high profile and make themselves precious animals. Pandas are chubby and cute, making them a national treasure. From underwear to outerwear, Luffy chose a very ordinary style, gray-white, with a top and hat that could cover his terrifying scalp. The sleeves were relatively long, allowing his hands to be tucked in. Socks and shoes have all been chosen in sporty styles, which are conducive to running and jumping. Then, it's a backpack, used to hold some things. For example, Luffy picked up a telescope from a counter, looked around, and found that a zombie could also use a telescope. This is easy to understand. Everyone thinks that zombies have no vision, but Luffy thinks it's not right. It just can't analyze the information feedback from the eyes to the brain, which is too complex for it. Perhaps with the evolution of zombies, vision will be restored. Therefore, telescopes are somewhat useful for Luffy. In the book counter, there is a thick and latest version of the tourist map. Lufei flipped through it and found that besides the maps of major, small, and medium-sized cities and county towns in Z country, there are even maps of some famous foreign cities. Moreover, it is the latest version, which was released in March of the first half of the year. I decisively stuffed it into my backpack. Luffy wandered between the shelves of the supermarket, picking them up whenever he found them useful. I casually packed a box of Durex into my backpack. It's not that it's useful, it's just that he got used to it and only realized it when he threw it into his backpack. Previously, Luffy was a wealthy second generation, and this thing was almost always prepared for long-term use and carried with him. According to his unscrupulous father, women have always seen your identity, and your money cannot be given to others as leverage. He returned to the raw meat counter and dug out a string of keys from his pocket of clothes he had taken off. That's the key to his house. After killing Li Yufeng and his gang, Lufei decided to go home. There are also several fully charged phones that he wants to use, making Li Yufeng and his team feel hopeless. Finally, he opened the freezer blocked at the entrance of the bar, ate some raw meat, and walked towards the outside of the supermarket. He opened the scroll gate of the mall and pulled it down again. Because he knew that there were other survivors in this mall, and killing was a last resort. In a situation where either he died or I died, killing was killing. However, in Luffy's heart, he still did not want humanity to go extinct. For those who have no grievances or grudges against themselves, just give them a hand if you can. There are no more zombies in the supermarket, and the supplies are enough to support them for a while. As for the future, it depends on their fate. It was already afternoon now, and under the scorching sun, Luffy approached the hotel. He found that the hotel door had already been closed by someone. It seems that the morning music helped Li Yufeng and his team lure away most of the wandering zombies in the hotel, causing them to close the hotel. But with me around, your hard work is just in vain. Luffy was on the street, looking for an SUV with a slightly higher chassis, and crawled in and lay down. Take out a few phones and fill them with alarms, time interleaving. Then came the wait, he had to wait until it was dark, and then, hee. Time is flowing away minute by second. After it was completely dark, Luffy crawled out of the car and looked at the hotel in front of him, thinking, so, let's enjoy despair. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Disappearance of Hatred. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Disappearance of Hatred. Li Gu, you want to take a shower tomorrow, can you? Mi Xiao Xiao asked softly in Li Yufeng's chest at the hotel. Li Yufeng said, isn't that just one sentence from me? Really? Mi Xiao Xiao asked with a hint of excitement. It's the end of the world, and eating and drinking water have become a problem. Taking a shower is also a luxury enjoyment. Of course, I also hope you wash well every day. Li Yufeng frowned. To be honest, the scent on Kurenner, who was snuggling in his arms at the moment, was not pleasant. Therefore, he agreed to Kurenner's request without thinking about it. After more than half a month of effort, the zombies on the floor where the hotel's large private room is located have been cleaned up by them. This is not a difficult task for humans who are countless times more intelligent than zombies, and they have also searched for some supplies. After experiencing some unforgettable experiences, a group of female classmates also accepted a fact. That is to say, if you want to have a full stomach, you must give something. A few girls give their lives, while most choose to give their bodies. Those who give their lives to gain understanding will never be hungry again. Girls who give their bodies gradually understand a truth. In the apocalypse, if a woman wants to survive, she must choose to rely on men. This apocalyptic world is too unfriendly to women. After cleaning the entire floor, a few boys were assigned to independent rooms. Most of the boys here were students who had never heard of anything outside the window before the end of the day. They were full of longing for male and female affairs, which they dared not do before, but now they have no constraints. After the first time, they feel like they have become addicted. Apart from going out and fighting with zombies, eating, drinking, and sleeping, the rest of the time is mostly spent with girls. Fortunately, there will definitely be layoffs for boys going out desperately, but most girls are still alive, and there has not been a situation where boys fight fiercely for girls. After some ups and downs, Li Yufeng lit a cigarette and asked, who is stronger than Luffy? Mi Xiao gasped for a moment and was stunned. Cut, of course you're stronger. Luffy is short and weak, how can he compare to you? Mi Xiao blinked her eyes in the dark, tears dripping from the corners of her eyes. Once upon a time, she needed to please such a poor student in every way, saying things against her heart, just to be able to eat enough and take a cold shower. Hee, go to sleep. Li Yufeng smiled and fell into a dream. Mi Xiao tossed and turned, unable to fall asleep. After some time, she vaguely heard the ringing of her phone. At first, she didn't pay attention, maybe it was the alarm on a zombie's phone. After about 3 minutes, it stopped, which further confirmed her speculation. But after another 5 minutes, the alarm rang again and kept repeating itself. Finally, she couldn't maintain her composure anymore. She pushed Li Yufeng beside her, and Li Yufeng angrily said, "You're going to die. Go to bed now. There's movement outside." Li Yufeng also sat up and faintly heard his phone ringing. Chua, what kind of despicable move is this? They all said to be quiet. He jumped out of bed, casually put on a few clothes, and opened the door. Ah! After a brief surprise, Li Yufeng quickly closed the door. How could it be? How could it be? Immediately after, there came a hurried tapping sound on the door outside. What's wrong? Mi Xiao asked, feeling a faint sense of unease in her heart. Li Yufeng scratched his head in panic and said, "There are all zombies outside. There are so many." Mi Xiao trembled when she heard Li Yufeng's voice. She didn't understand and couldn't help but say, "Why clean it up again? It's the same as before." "What do you understand?" Li Yufeng said in a deep voice, "The number of zombies in the hallway now is 10 times higher than before. The entire floor is full of zombies, how can we clean it up? What should we do?" Mi Xiao grabbed Li Yufeng's arm and asked. "Trough." Li Yufeng rudely shook off Mi Xiao's hand and said, "How do I know what to do?" He was also very puzzled in his heart. In theory, there were almost no zombies that could move freely in the hotel. The door to enter and exit the hotel was also locked by him himself. So how did so many zombies come from? He really can't figure it out. But this does not hinder the established fact that they were trapped in various private rooms of the hotel. On one hand, there are countless zombies, and on the other hand, the height of a 17-story building, no matter how you choose, it is a death. In the safe passage at the end of the corridor, Luffy looked at the densely packed zombie heads in front of him and sneered inwardly. At this moment, this hotel is filled with zombies from several entire streets. That night, someone suddenly opened the door and was rushed into the private room by zombies, with screams echoing throughout the world. Luffy could hear the voice of the old class among them. "As a homeroom teacher, I didn't take any action after the end of the day, allowing Li Yufeng and his classmates to target him. I also took the lead in bullying some female classmates, which was no different from the teacher who appeared on TV and ran away alone after abandoning students during the earthquake. Damn it. In the next few days, it was relatively calm. At this moment, Luffy was already sitting in an abandoned Land Rover on the street. Suddenly, a muffled sound came, and Luffy could hear it. It was the sound of someone jumping off a building and smashing their body towards the ground. He got off the car and saw a person from afar convulsing on the cement floor, with a puddle of blood flowing slowly around him, tempting Luffy. "It's Mi Xiao." Luffy's gaze was drawn to the wound on Mi Xiao's arm, which was missing some muscle tissue. The wound was cut with a sharp tool, and Luffy could also guess the reason behind it. Looking up, a man's head peeked out of the window, and it was Li Yufeng. Lufei saw a look of regret on Li Yufeng's face, but more importantly, despair. Then, more heads popped out of the windows. After having the first leader, in the following days, more and more people chose to follow suit. Among them is Li Yufeng. The others were fine, there were still companions in the private room, but since Mi Xiao Xiao jumped off the building, he was the only one in the entire private room. There were endless zombies outside, with no supplies inside. Hunger, loneliness, and helplessness constantly filled his heart. In the end, he learned from Mi Xiao Xiao's appearance and carefully climbed up the window. There are no complete corpses downstairs, and several suicide victims have been devoured by the zombies who came upon hearing the news. Just because he died instantly after jumping off the building, he did not suffer the pain of being eaten by zombies. He tried other suicide methods, such as hitting his head against a wall, but due to insufficient strength, he couldn't die at all and even caught the attention of the zombies outside the door. For example, if a dagger is gestured around the neck, it lacks the courage to pierce it. Perhaps jumping off a building is the best way to commit suicide. Close your eyes, open your hands, and try to imagine yourself as a soaring eagle. With just one leap, you no longer have to endure the tumbling hunger in your stomach. Look, a few chicks are soaring in the air, shouting at him and urging him to take that step. Li Yufeng closed his eyes and jumped down from the window. On his deathbed, he saw a person with a terrifying face, looking down at him from above with the surrounding zombies gnawing on Li Yufeng's body. Lufei's hatred dissipated in his heart. End of this chapter.